Breath of the Wild 2. Can I just say I hate calling it that? Sure, I say it because saying the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild every time I went to refer to the game in a video would just be atrocious. But the thought of Nintendo not giving Breath of the Wild sequel a proper subtitle haunts me in my sleep at night. I mean, you can't just take a series that has 19 games over 34 years, all with different titles, and for the first time, not give one a unique subtitle. I said it on Twitter and I'll say it here again, but if this happens, I will literally bang my head against the wall for 15 minutes. In all seriousness, it will probably be fine, and the game is almost certainly going to have a unique subtitle, but that 1% chance that they don't to capitalize on Breath of the Wild's brand popularity, it scares me. Anyway, sorry about the tangent, let's get on to today's theory now, shall we? When it comes to this trailer, the focal points are clear. This corpse and this hand. I've given evidence and told stories to explain these figures over 3 different videos, and while I assure you there are even more versions to what could end up being their possible story, that's not what we're here for today. Because even if we step away from this corpse and hand, there is much information to glean from this trailer. Let's leave all that is happening underground and make our way back up to the surface. At first it might not seem so interesting, looking out above the ground at a familiar scene, but something is indeed missing. Some very familiar structures. Sheikah shrines and towers defined the landscape in Breath of the Wild, yet in the sequel's trailer, not a shrine or tower is in sight. This is more than a bit odd and poses the question, why would these relics disappear from Hyrule's surface yet again? A few reasons came to mind. First, maybe in the sequel, the shrines and towers we expect to see on this landscape haven't arisen yet. And maybe the title of the sequel is a little misleading from what Breath of the Wild 2 actually is. A prequel. I personally put little stock in the idea that Breath of the Wild 2 will be a prequel to Breath of the Wild. However, I cannot deny the fact that the trailer does not show us anything to disprove this theory. If anything, the absence of shrines and towers support it. The greatest knock against Breath of the Wild 2 being a prequel to the first game is the name Nintendo decided to promote it as. The sequel to The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Our other option to explain the absence of these Sheikah structures is that they are no longer needed. The shrines and the towers were made for the purpose of training the hero and helping him to gain the strength and knowledge he would need to combat the evil of Hyrule. But with his triumph at the end of Breath of the Wild, the shrines and towers have lost their purpose, perhaps meaning they have yet again returned to the earth. As logical as this assumption of the structure's fate is, however, this explanation also isn't without flaw. See, during Breath of the Wild's true ending, we can clearly see that the towers and divine beasts of the Sheikah are still standing. And if you look close enough, you can also see the shrines are there as well. While this hurts this possibility, it does not break it. Shrines and towers could have easily been returned to the ground in the time gap between Breath of the Wild and its sequel, perhaps after a visit to Kakariko Village and a talk with Impa. The shrines and towers are returned to the earth, having no further use to the hero. But even then, that still leaves 4 gigantic parts of Breath of the Wild's landscape unaccounted for in Breath of the Wild 2's trailer. That's right, there is no sign of any divine beast so far within Breath of the Wild 2. Going to approximately the same location in Breath of the Wild as seen in the new game's trailer, one divine beast can be seen within the camera's view, Vah Rudania, yet here, it's nowhere to be seen. Even if the shrines and towers return to the ground, what of the divine beasts? Surely they couldn't have been stored underground yet again. The work that would require wouldn't be worth it in Hyrule's current state. I believe the most plausible explanation as to the divine beast's whereabouts is they have simply moved from their attacking positions, moved into secluded sections of Hyrule, such as here, 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 and here. In the case of Vah Ruta, that would mean moving back to the East Reservoir Lake. Similarly, Vah Naboris would also move back down to the Gerudo Desert's vast sands, anywhere from the East Gerudo Ruins to the Arbiter's Grounds in the south. It's Vah Meadow and Rudania that would see the most significant changes in their dwelling locations. Rudania would most likely relocate to the lava pools west of Death Mountain, specifically Lake Darman. Vah Meadow would also most likely move to the west, perching on Kuho Mountain, or maybe even making nests in Giza Greater. I think these relocations could be a sign that the beasts will have a lot less to do in Breath of the Wild 2. The Divine Beast served as Breath of the Wild's 4 great hurdles throughout the game. They are most readily compared to the main puzzle-oriented challenges of past Zelda games, being dungeons. But despite some similarities, the Divine Beasts are no traditional Zelda dungeons. Breath of the Wild is a game about breaking conventions and pushing the Zelda series into the modern gaming landscape. But almost any longtime Zelda fan would tell you, while that's all fine and dandy, they do miss some of the old stuff. One of the most common complaints upon release being the lack of traditionally structured Zelda dungeons. I believe if there was one criticism the dev team heard loud and clear, it was this. And the lack of story. But whoopity-doo, it sure is shaping up and looking like they want to solve both of these problems in the sequel. Without shrines or divine beasts in sight, Breath of the Wild 2 is ready for some big objective changes. One of which I strongly believe to be a return to dungeons that act a bit more similar to those of the days of old. A job posting for Breath of the Wild 2's development team from back in July 2019 called for a terrain designer and a level designer, with descriptions mentioning the terrain designer working on field dungeons, and the level designer working on game events, dungeons, and field planning. Now granted, the dungeons these job descriptions are referring to could be something very similar to divine beasts or shrines, but I'm not so sure about that. The use of the phrase field dungeons in the terrain designer's description is interesting. Shrines are not field dungeons. Sure, you find them in the overworld, but the actual trials you undertake are located in enclosed underground spaces, and are very restricted spaces at that. The field dungeon description seems to be implying more than that. Either by implementing naturally integrated dungeons, or by creating enclosed dungeons expansive and open enough to be referred to as that of their own playing fields. And the thing is, both of these ideas are entirely possible. First, naturally integrated dungeons. When you enter a dungeon in a Zelda game, it's almost always a secluded experience. But Breath of the Wild 2 and its world have the opportunity to create more interplay between dungeons and the world than ever before, breaking down the barriers between the two. Think back on how seamlessly Hyrule Castle was integrated into the first game. I think we could very well see that kind of structure infused with a bit of the past Zelda title's linearity in Breath of the Wild 2's dungeons. Second, enclosed expansive dungeons. What if I told you we've already seen a glimpse of what this new dungeon format in Breath of the Wild 2 could look like? What if I told you the journey to the bottom of the sprawling cavern in search of the body is not only the opening of the game, but also the game's first dungeon? This would be a much more open and unique take on dungeons that only Breath of the Wild 2 could do. Almost as if each dungeon is a mini overworld that could provide a similar yet entirely more focused experience. More puzzles, more enemies, and more taking advantage of your surroundings in classic Breath of the Wild fashion. Either way, the future for Zelda dungeons is looking quite bright. Hey there, you just watched the video. That's pretty awesome. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe. Sounds like a good way to keep you updated and keep me motivated. Also, if you want even more updates and random talk, you can follow me on Twitter at Xenogamer YT. Also, link in the description thing. You know, that thing. I also wanted to just give a huge thank you to all the new subscribers. The growth on the channel lately has been absolutely insane. I'm flabbergasted by the support and how amazing you guys are, so thank you, and I'm glad you're enjoying the videos. If you liked the video, give it a like, maybe even share it around if you're so inclined. That's it for today. I will see you guys soon in another video. Peace.